And MFA, we've been expecting these changes. That shake-up in Parliament is finally here, and some very interesting names moving around as far as the committees are concerned. Alex and Afenyo-Markin, as you know, the new leadership that took over sometime early this year, they are making the changes. And tonight they've made a number of them. The leadership of the committees have now moved around a bit. Changes in the chairmanship of the Energy Committee, for example. Samuel Atta Akyea has been moved now to the local government committee, with the chairman of that committee, Emmanuel Akwesi, now taking his place. Chairman of the finance committee will now be Patrick Yaw Boamah, who replaces Kwaku Kwarteng, whom we've been told will now head to the economic committee. And there's been some controversy around that. In fact, the NDC MPs had told us way before this happened that there was a plot to remove him because of his opposition to government's insistence of pushing through a bill that would have given more than $400 million worth of tax breaks to companies in this country. Now, NDC MPs now chair at least 10 of some of the most important committees, including Northong MP Samuel Atta Akyea, who is now the chairman of the powerful Government Assurances Committee, which monitors all assurances made in Parliament by government officials. Let's bring in our parliamentary correspondent, Kwaku Asante, who joins us right now. Kwaku, what are some of the other changes that we are learning tonight that is causing a bit of a stir in Parliament?
Well, Evans, if you look at the Finance Committee, just like you mentioned, Patrick Boamah, who used to be the vice chair, is now taking over from his boss, Kwaku Kwarteng, who has now been removed as the chairman of the Finance Committee. Look at the minority setup on that committee. They still maintain it. Isaac Adongo is still the ranking member. The Honorable Richard Achampong is the deputy ranking member. There's new so-called committee on the economy. If you look at the new standing orders, there's a new committee that will focus on the economy, National Development Planning Commission and all that. That committee will now be chaired by the minority. And the name that the minority have put forward is Kwaku Kwarteng, himself a former deputy finance minister, when he chaired that. There were a lot of talk about Kwaku Kwarteng becoming the ranking or the spokesperson of the majority side. That has not happened. We are getting some indication that Kwaku Kwarteng says, if it's not a finance committee that I'm going to chair, then I'm not going to be in the leadership of any committee. Ama Puma Boateng, a former deputy communications minister, is now the ranking on that committee. There's also now a new committee on private members' bill, as per the new standing orders, that is supposed to look at the influx of private members' bill that is now being filed by members. The first deputy speaker, Joseph Osewusu, will now chair that committee, and Francis Xavier Susu, who himself has sponsored the most private members' bill in the life of Ghana's parliament, is now the ranking on that committee. There's also now a budget committee, which is now an offshoot of the bigger finance committee. It is to be chaired by NDC MP Thomas Ampemnyako, and then Tina Mensah of the majority side will now become the ranking member. The local government committee used to be chaired by the MP for Odo Tobri, who is now moved to go and chair the energy committee. So Akwesi will now move from the committee on local government to the committee on energy. It is no longer the mines and energy committee. It is now just energy committee to focus on that. And Atacha is no longer on the energy committee. John Jinapo will continue in that role as the ranking member on the energy committee. When you look at the foreign affairs committee, Dr. Rashid Purple used to be the ranking member on the lands and natural resources committee. He is now the ranking member on foreign affairs, taking over from Samuel Atta Akyea, who has now been moved to chair the government assurances committee. So lands and natural resources, like I said, used to be ranked by Dr. Rashid Purple. Alhassan Suhini now gets to be the boss on that committee in terms of the minority being the ranking. The Works and Housing Committee has also almost always been chaired by the government side. It is now chaired by the minority in the current architecture of the House. And Honorable Opon Samoa is the chairman, an NDC MP. Andrew Dari Chiwite is now the vice chair, an NDC MP. The Communications Committee, Mahama Yerga has now been moved from the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee in terms of leadership structure to come and be the ranking member on the Communications and Information Committee. That means Alhaji ABF Hussein, who used to be the minority ranking on that committee, is no longer there. Sam George retained as deputy ranking. If you look at the Defense and Interior Committee, it is still chaired by Honorable Kennedy Japan. The ranking is still James Agaga, but the vice ranking, which used to be Dr. Zaneto Ajiman Rollins, has now been moved, and the former senior police officer, Peter Lanchini Tobu, is now the deputy ranking on that committee.
So we've seen a lot of changes there in Parliament, and I quickly want to move on to something that has been playing out on the floor today. The controversial lithium agreement came to the floor today. In spite of the changes that we've seen already, we've seen some divisions at play, even among the minority MPs, to the point where Kwaku Kwarteng, who is the minority chief whip, was asking the second deputy speaker not to refer a matter to the Mines and Energy Committee, as we've just been detailing there, a committee which had John Jinapor as a ranking at the time. What has been happening there? Well,
so first, listen to Governor Kwaku Kwarteng make his case for why he believes that should not go to the Mines and Energy Committee, that we can bring in some of the antecedents and the things that we are learning about this open fight in Parliament today.
Concerns about mining in forests, on water bodies and other things, just because they want it to be passed. Mr. Speaker, there's nothing in our standing order today that will stop us from allowing them to lay. But be assured, you will not be allowed to cajole anybody to lay a lithium agreement for anyone to go and mine in a reserve forest. Even if you give us 10 trillion, we don't care. You'll be forced to do the right thing and make sure the environment is protected, not for you and I only, but for the future generations yet unborn. So we are not going to stand in your way of laying it, but the committee that this will be referred to. And Mr. Speaker, we are just about to approve the new committees under the new standing order. People have been attempting for this to be referred to a joint committee. Today, we are encouraging you to refer this to only the Committee of Lands, yes, and Natural Resources. This idea, yes, because this idea of this joint committee creates a problem. Mining has nothing to do with energy. Mining is a land and natural resource matter. So, Mr. Speaker, we were hoping that we will complete the setting up of the committees today before we make the referral. Those who are pushing for this to be laid ahead of time should know this will not be referred to Mines and Energy and Lands Committee. It must necessarily go to the Lands and Natural Resource Committee only. And we shall follow up to make sure that the right thing is done for this country. No one is allowed to mine, and then when we do this, and then the people are crying in their communities, the Parliament absorbs itself. It is our responsibility to approve the agreement and do the oversight of this, Mr. Speaker. Those are the only things I have to say before we go ahead.
So that there is Governor Kwaku Kwarteng, who is a minority whip on the floor today on that subject of the lithium. And quickly, what was happening in the background? While this was happening, there was some disagreement that was visibly on the floor or within the NDC minority members.
Yes, we are picking some indication that the minority chief whip was making this point because the NDC MPs are afraid of an apparent conflict of interest. The lithium mining agreement was signed by the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, which is headed by Samuel Atta Akyea. Before these new committees was passed, the Mines and Energy Committee used to be ranked by John Jinapor. These are brothers. And there are those that are saying that the unspeakable thing in what Kwaku Kwarteng was doing on the floor was that they do not want a situation where brothers are going to be in terms of the persons deciding on this matter. And that is why, and in fact, what Governor Kwaku Kwarteng was on his feet, John Jinapor himself was up already, saying that he felt slighted with the way his own chief whip was going about the matter on the floor of the House.
I do admit that there's a new standing order. And I do admit that there's been a transition. I am not challenging the chief whip of the minority side, and I dare not challenge him. If I ever have issues, I will discuss it with him personally so that we resolve this matter. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, nobody is rushing for any referral to be made to a committee. I'm sure that, Mr. Speaker, you are competent enough to determine that based on the gravamen of the subject matter, you want one committee, two committees, or leadership of a certain committee to join another committee. And that has always been our practice. But to rise up and say that under no circumstance will you go to this committee, and the no circumstances will go to the other committee. I think it's premature. It's premature. So I would plead with the minority chief whip. If you want the new committees to be constituted, let's do that. It is in your court. If you constitute new committees, wherever you take us, we will serve there and work for you. But such comments, I will plead with him. You should hold it, because as mines and energy ranking, when you refer to my committee and you make such a statement, it really hurts a little. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And Kwaku, how did the second deputy speaker who was presiding at the time rule on this?
The second deputy speaker did defy the chief whip. He referred this report to both the Lands and Natural Resources Committee as well as the then Mines and Energy Committee. But as we know now, per the new standing orders and per the new committees that have just been approved like an hour ago, there is no longer a Mines and Energy Committee. So that referral is now moved. The Speaker of Parliament himself took the chair, and Alassane Suhuyini did raise that issue on the floor, asking the Speaker to refer the agreement to only the Natural Resources Committee, because according to them, the Mines and Energy Committee is no longer functional. There's only an Energy Committee. The Speaker of Parliament did accept that request. He varied the referral that had earlier been made, and so the lithium mining agreement, as well as another bauxite mining agreement, has now been referred solely to the Lands and Natural Resources Committee, with the Speaker asking the leadership, including the chief whips, to join in and assist the committee.
I mean, what about the Speaker himself? Did he intervene at some point?
Yes, the Speaker of Parliament, like I was saying, did come in now and varied the order that had been made by the Deputy Speaker, that report should go to both the Lands and Natural Resources Committee as well as the Mines and Energy Committee. Bagbin says that should no longer be the case. This should go straight to the Lands and Natural Resources Committee, which now has Alassane Suhuyini as the ranking member, and then the chief whips as well as other leadership should join in and assist.
My attention was drawn to referrals of some mineral agreements to Joint Committee on Lands and Energy, Lands and Energy Committees, Joint Committees. I have been looking at that referral, and I've had discussions. And because of the critical nature of the subject matter, I proposed, and leadership accepted, that we should rather refer those agreements to the Lands and Natural Resources Committee, with the additional directive that 4 members from the leadership of each side of the House should assist in the deliberation of the committee. Honorable members, these are critical agreements that will have to be scrutinized seriously. I will not participate in the debate, but I will be very vigilant, because for some time now, I belong to the school of thought that believe that we have not benefited from the natural endowment that God has so much blessed this nation. And it's all because of the agreements that we enter into with these private sector investors. Please, this time around, we will not hesitate in rejecting any agreement that we believe is not in the interest of the nation. The new composition of the committees, as we realize, have...
Well, the Speaker there talking about the composition of the new committees. I want to bring in Habib Idrisu, who's the Majority Chief Whip. Deputy joins us right now on the line. Mr. Idrisu, thanks for your time here on Newsnight.
Thank you.
I mean, there's been one criticism, in fact, not only criticism, but from your minority colleagues, as far as the the committee responsible for finance is concerned, where Kwaku Kwarteng was there, they had constantly in the public discussion said that the changes that had happened today, which obviously was as a result of the standing orders being changed, you were hiding behind that to remove him because of his opposition to the tax waivers. Is that what has happened?
No, that's far from the truth. We were actually not changing him for purposes relating to the tax waivers. If it was the case, we still have the right to have come before the floor, whether there was a new standing order or not, to change members of the committees or leadership of the committees from the majority side. In fact, the new standing orders, we were operating it partially because it has membership that vetted part of the some of the ministers that has just been approved, that we use the new standing orders to constitute the appointment committee. We use it to be able to, that's what is guiding us in Parliament at the moment. But it has actually not been fully operationalized as a result of the fact that members of various committees were not constituted. So the selection committee had, back and forth, and even if you look at it very well, you could see that some of the committees are chaired by people in the minority. It was always not the case because the majority used to chair where the minority used to be ranking. But with these new standing orders, you see that the minority are chairing some committees and the majority are being ranking in those committees. So it is never the case that it has been done and then hiding under it to change the chairman of the finance committee. If you quite remember, the majority leader had hinted some 2 weeks ago that the chairman of the finance committee, Kwaku Kwarteng, will be taking a new role where he will be the spokesperson on the economy on the side of the majority. And we think that we should have been able to free him of that position.
But that is
because it's critical position.
Yeah, but that is a demotion, is it not? I mean, a spokesperson on the economy from a chairman of a very powerful committee in Parliament, in the Finance Committee. They had wide-ranging powers, including supervising with the Finance Ministry and looking strictly at budgets that come before Parliament.
But he has done that for close to 4 years because he was the chairman of the Finance Committee until today. And then we have about 5 months to election or 4 months to election. So we needed him, the experience he has had as Deputy Minister for Finance for 4 years, the experience he has had as the chairman, to blend it for us. He can handle issues that have to do with the economy. Mind you, when you look at the minority side, they always try to talk about the economy. We needed somebody who can be able to speak to us on that directive. And the majority, the most important thing is that the majority caucus hasn't done that changes or changed him in person because he was in opposition to something. He's part of the government, the majority caucus.
So he's going to be the spokesperson. He's going to be the spokesperson on economy now.
Yes.
And he couldn't have done that. He couldn't have done that as
and
a
he's
chair.
a member of the economic committee too.
Yeah, but he couldn't have done that as a chair of the finance committee.
Yeah, because the chairman of the finance committee, is too busy to do certain things. And if we allow him to be the chairman, he might not have the time to be able to handle certain things for us.
In substance, what is the difference between this committee, this economic committee, and the finance committee you used to chair?
If you look at the economic committee, our standing orders, it look at loans and other items as may deem necessary by the Speaker reference. So the economic committee is separated from the finance committee. So majority of the loan agreements and other things now will be going to the economic committee, and other financial related issues will be going to the finance committee. I don't have my standing order with me where I could be able to relate with the portions of the standing orders that actually explain this position.
Thank you very much. And that there is Habib Idrisu. He is a Deputy Majority Whip in Parliament. Interesting changes in the House today on the back of the new standing orders taking effect. Let's hear from you. 055 11 997.